Hey folks, Ozone here, and it's that time of the week again. It's time for the next update roundup. This week sees the arrival of update 7.6. Seriously, devs? Are you afraid of running out of numbers or something? Minor rant here, but the pack has a real problem with naming consistency. Am I right? Anyway, aside from being oddly named, this update has the usual mix of reworks, tweaks, balances, and bug fixes. Compared to the last few updates, however, this one is much smaller in terms of scope and changes. Hence the .6 naming, I guess. Additionally, they had previously announced the new thing called the Abyss, which is some kind of harder game mode that's supposed to be coming out this weekend too, but that's been delayed and will be in the next update in a few weeks. Hey wait, don't go just yet! Just because it's a smaller update doesn't mean there's nothing here to learn about. There are some cool things in this update you'll want to stick around for. So starting off with the big change in this update, we see a rework of how Beginner's Grace is handled in the vaults. Now when I say Beginner's Grace, I mean to also include Afterlife and Casual mode as well. Basically all the things that keep you from losing your stuff in the vaults when you die. Beginner's Grace in its current form is flawed in many ways. Yes, it isn't satisfying to spend all this time and work to loot stuff and maybe even get that big Omega room and only to have it all ripped away if you die. But it is better than losing everything when you die. But its biggest flaw is that it can be used to duplicate items pretty easily. The devs have and continue to do a lot of work to prevent those exploits. This update essentially admits that it's impossible to prevent every exploit, and so they need to just take a completely different approach. When you die in the vault that has Beginner's Grace, you no longer return with all your items like they were before you entered the vault. Instead, you return with all of the items you had at the time of your death. This includes anything you had initially, as well as anything you gained. That's right, you get to keep the loot even if you die in a vault. But there has to be some penalty, right? Now when you die in the vault, your gear takes an extra hit on durability based on how much you accomplished in the vaults. I read this to mean that the experience that you would have earned in the vault is turned into a durability loss on your gear. And this doesn't just include the armor that you wore or the tools that you used. No, this applies to all of the gear in your inventory, whether it was used in the vault or not. Now as stated, one of the good things is that you get to keep your loot. But one of the bad is you can't really die as a way to roll back a big mistake. I mean, have you ever accidentally lost something really good in a vault? Something that's really valuable, like that really good vault sword you threw in the lava, or the soul pouch full of shards that you somehow accidentally left into a chest, and then just given up and died in order to get it back. I mean, assuming you had Beginner's Grace or something in the first place. Well, that strategy is no longer valid after this update. I mean, it certainly wasn't the intended way to be using Afterlife, but it worked. But not anymore. I don't know anybody that would have done that. Not at all. If you play with some form of Beginner's Grace, there are several side effects to this change as well. For one, the soulbound modifier was essentially useless before, because it would do the same thing for one piece of armor that Beginner's Grace does for everything. After this change, however, soulbound is a lot more useful, because it prevents the durability damage to that piece of gear if you die. Can you imagine a build of gear where soulbound is on everything? You just run and run and run until you run out of time and well, it's all good, because you don't take any durability damage because everything is soulbound. I'm thinking that's a strat that I might have to try. One of the other side effects that I'm most excited about is that if you die in a co-op that has Beginner's Grace, you no longer take down the entire party. Previously, it was a TPK, total party kill, when somebody died. The entire run was only as strong as the weakest player. Now, however, they can just keep on going without you. Overall, this is one change that I rather like, because I feel terrible when I'm the one to die in a co-op, and it's ruined for everyone. Now, the patch notes don't really say one way or the other, but I assume that you can still drop a ghost in the vault and have it be rescued. But I guess we'll have to wait until somebody wipes in a co-op vault to see what happens. One of my bigger complaints about Afterlife specifically is that the curses you can get are excessively harsh. The worst curses, like Crab Walk, where you can't walk forward or backward, Confused, where your left and right move buttons are swapped, and Jupiter Gravity, where you can't jump, have been removed. I think this is a really good one because honestly, any vault that you get with those curses is unplayable. But there are a couple new curses to replace them. Specifically, poor, which reduces item quantity, and unlucky, which reduces item rarity. However, as curses go, that doesn't seem too bad at all. Another side effect is that the Phoenix modifier now behaves differently as well. It used to simply be an afterlife without curses, which you could sometimes get from a normal afterlife crystal anyway. Now it's like a better totem of undying that you don't have to carry. You can even stack multiple Phoenix modifiers on a crystal. If you die in a vault with a Phoenix modifier, you immediately return, get a regeneration effect, and it does some damage to any nearby mobs. It will remove one of the stacks of Afterlife, and you should be able to keep going. Now, of course, this only applies to one crystal, so it's not transferable or reusable if you manage to not die in the vault run. Like I said, it's a bit of a smaller rework, but I think this one was necessary. If you don't use an Afterlife type of modifier, it shouldn't really have any impact on you. But I understand that the majority of the players out there do. So for all of them, it's pretty impactful. I generally think this is a buff. The extra durability loss should be pretty easily offset by the items you now get to keep, unless the balance is way off, of course. Next up, cake vaults have been tweaked quite a bit too. Previously, each cake would add a new modifier to the vault. If you get a lot of good modifiers, it could make for a really rich vault. But if you had a lot of bad modifiers, it could make for a really rough vault. Either way, it was about getting to the end and collecting all the cakes. Now, however, it's supposed to be about the journey. You always get 2 angry modifiers and 2 good modifiers. The angry adds 1% to the mob's strength, and the good modifiers are either sweet, which improves the item rarity, delicious, which improves the item quantity, or cherry, which adds 30 seconds to the vault timer. Gone are the days of getting 4 times gilded chest, but also gone are the days of getting the 7 times wild modifier that we once had. That was pretty crazy. The maximum length has also gone from 40 to 60 cakes. I think 60 cakes is pretty well impossible, so it means a lot more vaults where you decide to turn around. I guess the strategy now is to go until you're happy with the difficulty to loot ratio, and then loot your way back. Unless you can tell that there's not that many cakes left, in which case you just try to complete it. I don't know how I feel about this. I like cake vaults, but I also liked getting the really good modifiers. You can't really see higher item quantity or item rarity values very well. So it's just not as satisfying as walking into a room and seeing a whole bunch of living chests laying around or coin piles. So I think overall this makes running cake vaults a lot less interesting and a lot more boring. Now we're on to a few smaller changes. First, the Mushroom Omega Room has been revamped to make it easier to get to chests, as well as having more chests to get to. The Mushroom Omega Room has lots of living chests all over, but they were hard to see and hard to get to. Now it's supposed to be easier, which is nice. I think one of the streamers just decided he wouldn't ever loot one of those rooms because it takes too long. It's just too much time to get up to the chests, and it's not worth it to him. Next, the cost of items in the Spirit Extractor has been tweaked again, so the recovery cost of the new vault tools is based upon their tier. The first 2 tiers are free, so I think the overall effect is that it's generally cheaper to recover your items from a ghost at this point. An interesting change is that running vaults significantly below your level greatly reduces the durability loss to your gear. I guess it makes sense because you already are getting a lot less loot and XP. Maybe it's also there to encourage you to help others that are a lower level than you. Kind of like we do on this server. I'm not real sure, but it's not a bad thing, so that's always a win in my book. The last change that seems important is that the durability cost on your vault tools for some actions has been updated. Specifically, breaking a spawner now uses 10 times the durability it once did before, and breaking a wooden chest uses 3 times the durability. These seem to be pretty steep nerfs, as these are both things we do a lot. One last word of caution is that, like nearly every update, there's been a hotfix to this one, but even that hotfix had a hotfix. So make sure you're getting the latest version if you're applying this patch. At the time of this recording, it's 7.6HH. Oh, I almost missed this one. Next up, we have the plug to like and subscribe. So I'm over here in Rabbit's house to get the point across. I really hope this video has been useful to you, and I intend to keep on making them. So if you want to keep up to date with the updates, hit that subscribe button. See what I did there with that pun? I've said before that I was shooting for 500 subs by the end of the year, but wow, we're almost there already. Talk about encouragement and validation. You like me. You really, really like me. And by the way, thank you so much for that. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me with this update roundup today. Be excellent to each other. I'm out.